Jacob's children, and more specifically, for those of us who've been around and you're my age and you came to Sunday school and you learned all the characters, then you remember Joseph, the one with the coat of many colors. Because as it was read today, we realized that there were some problems in this family. One of the issues that we find in this family is that the father favors one son over the other children. He favors Joseph over his other children. One of the reasons is that Joseph is his love child. Yeah, Joseph was the son of the wife that he was crazy about. And so therefore, he not only favors him because he is now the younger son. Benjamin will become the youngest, but he is a younger son to his other brothers. But he also is the son of the woman that he loved. And so there were some problems in this family. There was some division, some strife, if you will. It was like some other families and some other relationships that we may be familiar with in our own lives. Because oftentimes there's problems in families. We sometimes call ourselves dysfunctional families, especially between siblings, because oftentimes brothers and sisters don't get along so well. When you find a family whereby people do get along, thank God for it. But oftentimes there are problems, and if you look around, you realize that there certainly are problems between siblings. And so here, to make matters worse, you have a father who favors one child over the others. Not only does he favor one child over the other, what we find out in the text is that that one child happens to also be somewhat of a brat. Not only is he a brat, he's one that talks too much. He's one that seems not only to be favored by his father, but he then accepts and embraces that favor to taunt his other brothers in the family. We find here in this text a man or a boy who is favored by his father, but also is not only a taunter, he's a tattletale. He likes to tell things on his other brothers. He has a problem talking too much. What we find out is that in any society, whether it be at work or in your family, nobody likes a snitch. In my neighborhood, they say snitches get stitches. And so therefore, nobody likes a tattletale. Nobody likes somebody who talks too much. Nobody likes somebody who embraces their favor and wears it proudly. And so that's what we have in Joseph, and his brothers are bothered with him. His father tells him to go out and to look to find his brothers. He goes out to find them basically so that he can spy on them. And when he arrives, before he arrives, they see him coming. Now, my grandfather used to say, they say, see you later, Hop. He said, not if I see you first. And so this was one of those situations where they saw Joseph afar off and they hated to see him coming. Now, I know, don't you act like a bunch of church folk today dressed up. Don't you know that there's always that one person that you hate to see coming? Well, you might be in the middle of a conversation at work, and when you see them coming, you start getting a little quiet because you know they nerve-wracking and they talk too much and they tell too much, and so therefore you hate to see him coming. So Joseph was coming, and they started to have a conversation even before he came, and they began to plot on Joseph. But I'm here to tell you something that you probably won't like, Sister Jasmine, because oftentimes we like to get the people back that get us. Oh yeah, that's a human trait. If somebody gets you, Brother Smith, then you want to get them back. You want to bother them. If they agitate you, you want to agitate them. But I'm here to tell you this morning that we ought not put down, but pull up. See, you got to realize there are some principles at stake here in our own lives. Well, one of the things that God said is he said that you must reap what you sow, for God shall not be mocked. Don't you realize that every person in this room needs grace and mercy? See, because all of us at some point in time was the one they didn't want to see coming. All of us have had some issues and some situations, and so we must be careful to realize that the judgment that you pass on somebody else, be careful, because the life you save might be your very own. You got to realize that you better make sure that you can eat the scoop before you dish the scoop. Because the fact is, the God that we serve tells us that we ought to forgive as we've been forgiven. And so we've got to be careful not to put down, but to pick up. The fact is, it is important for us to realize how to be in the positive and not the negative. In good standing with God and not on the wrong side of God. It is important for us to realize that we can never give too much, because as we give, God always replenishes. God always restores. God always takes care of us. We don't have to worry about our back, because God got your back. So here today, let's talk about how to pick up and not put down. So what do the brothers do? They decide that they are going to plot against him. They are going to basically get rid of him. So look what happens in verse 23. It says, and it came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. In order to pick up and not put down, number one, don't strip nobody. Don't strip anybody. See, sometimes we strip folks down. Sometimes it's not physical as much as it is emotional and spiritual. We strip people down with the way we talk about them and to them. You got to be careful stripping somebody down to their nakedness. You got to be careful stripping somebody down to their ultimate vulnerability. You know, sometimes I've heard people say, oh, I talked to him so till he felt so small. And see, we've got to be careful of stripping people of their dignity. We've got to be careful of stripping people down and embarrassing them because they did something to them. You got to be careful in terms of how you approach situations. And you've got to always make sure that even when somebody has done you wrong, it's important to cover them in a time of trouble. Oh yeah, sometimes we find somebody that's in trouble. We find somebody that's neglected, and the fact is, it's best to cover them, because in the future you may find out that you yourself might need somebody to cover you. Now think about it today. If somebody stripped you down in here, I don't think I got any nudists in this church, but I'm going to tell you right now that most of us wouldn't do too well, even physically, if we were stripped down in this church today and had to stand up here in our nudity. Nobody wants their closet to be open and on display. There's things in your closet, things in my closet, and it's things that you just don't want nobody else to know. So why would you strip somebody else down if you yourself can't take it? And so we need to pick up and not put down. Look at verse 24. Look at verse 24. It says this. And they took him. So after they stripped him, they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty and there was no water. They put him down. Don't put people down. The pit was down low. The pit was beneath them. They had to lower him in the pit. Later on we'll see that they had to pull him up out of the pit. Never put nobody lower than yourself. Why would you put somebody down when you stand on firm ground? Sometimes people can be annoying, and sometimes they can get on your nerve, but don't put them down. Because guess what? Just like somebody gets on your nerve, you get on somebody's nerve. Come on, man. No matter how fine you think your personality is, somebody is sick and tired of you. Somebody, when they see you coming, they bother. When somebody done called somebody just last night and said, you know what? Talking to them is like talking to a brick wall. Somebody was talking about you just yesterday. And so how can you put somebody down? Because the fact is, all of us sometimes need some little tolerance. You know that person you just sit and you listen to them and you just want something to happen so they'll stop? Please phone ring. I heard that son-in-law of the boy in the White House. He was in a meeting. He said he texted his secretary and said, could you call my phone? So I could get out of here. Sometimes you got that moment where you wish your phone would ring, where you wish somebody would call, maybe you say the dog died, something, so you get out of this. Well, you know what? We all sometimes go on and on and on about our situations and our problems. Amen. We all sometimes have some communication issues and so on and so forth. So don't put nobody in the pit. Because do we deserve to be put in the pit? Certainly we do. But His grace and mercy has kept us out. Look at verse 24 again. This really shocks me here. If you look at 24, it says, and they cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. You know what? You ought to always leave people with something. The pit was empty. Now, they looking at him as a bad person, but they some pretty bad people, they say. Do you know that oftentimes when we looking at the bad guy, that we got some bad things I say? If a person got problems, should we leave them with something? Do we live lives whereby we leave something, or are we always taking something? They put that boy in the pit, then leave nothing in there. Do you know sometimes the reason that people are in the shape that they're in is because we always leave them empty? You must realize in this text, these are his older brothers. If you got a problem with your younger brother, then the best thing to do is to teach the younger brother how to be a big brother. Oh, I wish you could catch that. See, sometimes we are busy complaining, and we're busy pointing the finger at the one we don't like, when we could like them if we would change our position and our expectation. See, your little brother might be irritating, but if he's irritating and you're the right kind of big brother, you would teach the little brother how to be a better brother. Oh, I wish you could understand. See, when we're talking about our young people, and when we're talking about those that are on the street corners and whatever else they might be doing, the fact is, if you see a problem, fix the problem.
Amen. Amen.
Woman last week, she was on the news, and I thought it was just absolutely wonderful. Because over at the Martin Luther King Extension Center, over on Mount Vernon, there, you know, Mount Vernon in that area, there's some rough areas over there. Sometimes you drive through there today, you think it's all right, but I'll tell you something, slide on down Garfield at night, you might not make it to the other end of the street. And so there's some rough areas in our town. And over in that Mount Vernon district is some rough areas. A woman saw the need. She said that she had been out on the streets and that she had some problems and such. And she said she wanted to do something for young people. She didn't have really good English. It was broken English and whatnot, and she was on the news. And so I thought to myself, I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of smarts. All it takes is the heart to want to do something. Yeah. And what she did is she got the extension center to put in some hydroponic gardens in the extension center. And they put these gardens in the extension center, and she's been allowing young people to come into the extension center all summer, and they've been learning about the science of growing plants indoors in a hydroponic system. And then the kids are collecting the vegetables, and they're putting them in these bags, and they're packaging them and selling them at farmers markets to continue to pay for the program. And so they're learning entrepreneurship at the same time. See, what this woman realized is that rather than to complain about little brother, why not raise little brother? So before we put them in the pit and strip them and leave them with nothing, then we ought to realize that we ought to leave them with something to make their lives better than we met them. Then let me show you something in 24 and 25, kind of on the same vein. It says that the pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then look at 25. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked and beheld a company of Israel. They sat down and ate while their brother was with nothing and with no water. And so here's what you need to do in order to pick up and not put down. Never get comfortable with thirst. They were so comfortable that they went to eat. I'm going to leave you hungry, Brother LeRon, and I'm going out and get me a two-piece snack. I mean, how can you be so cruel? Sometimes, not only do we leave people empty, but we're okay with somebody being in need while we've got plenty. At the very least, for your little brother, take him back a little snack, a little crust of bread, maybe a dish of water. Even a dog demands that. But their brother, they left him thirsty while they were eating. It's one thing, Sister Thelma, if we all thirsty, but it's another thing if I'm getting fat while you is sitting around somewhere hungry. And so we should never be comfortable with that. We should never be okay with that. Let me tell you, I don't know what they're going to do in Washington. Because right now, sometimes it seems like it's a dark day. But you know what? The church ought never get comfortable. The church ought never be okay with what's going on in the world today. We ought to always be worried about somebody else. We ought to be thinking about what they're going through and their problems and their situation. The other thing that we ought to know, that we ought to understand from that standpoint, because I know soon there will be some elections this year and some next year, and you'll go to the booth and you'll start to vote. But let me just remind you of something, and I'm not saying anything about one political party or the other, because one thing I'll tell you right now is I don't think we have a good political party. All political parties seem like they're the green party, the money party. They're concerned about how much money's coming in. But here's what I need you to know and need you to understand. Don't be fooled by these folk who come in on a cross and leave. As soon as the election is over, it's all over with. They come in like they know Jesus, and they come in talking about how good God is and what church they belong to and all this kind of thing. And then in the end, you take money away from the poor folks. You take money away from the senior folks. You take money away from those who are hungry and homeless and so on and so forth. How can we with a conscience support such a thing?
Amen.
So we must be careful not to endorse and to think about it. It's one thing if I hear some people say I don't vote. I hear some people say I do vote. But the one thing that we ought to always be concerned about is those who are thirsty and hungry in our society.
Yes, yes.
We ought never get so comfortable where that's okay. And so we should always be thinking about those who are in need. Pick them up, don't put them down.
Amen.
So here now that I have stood on my soapbox today, how to pick up and not put down, don't strip anyone, don't put people down, leave people with something, never get comfortable with thirst. And then look at verses 26 through 28, you realize, I'll just show you that last verse, 28. It says, then there passed some very nice merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they bought Joseph into Egypt. Well, don't put a price on people. That's the thing. Don't treat people like they're expendable. Don't put a price on them. Don't treat people like they are a commodity. Realize that all of us have been created by God.
Amen.
God has created everybody. And you know what? If God leaves you here and left them here, then that means you ought to realize that if God came, He expects you to. In other words, what I'm saying to you is that God picks us up even in our worst condition. If we really are going to ascribe to this thing called Christianity and say that we follow after Christ, and the fact is we got to be willing to pick up. But let me tell you, it doesn't make any difference one way or the other how you feel about it. So you might as well hitch your wagon to God. Meaning that, you can hate Him if you want to, but God still forgives. He has grace and He has mercy. You know what I've learned as I come to church and I learned a little Sunday school lesson, Brother Dan? I learned that it don't make no difference how far down you go. Because I heard there was a man, a Nazarene. They tell me this barefoot Nazarene, that fella, they put him in a borrowed tomb. After they had hung him on a cross, people will put you up and then they'll pull you down. They put him up on the cross and they pierced him in the side. They put nails in his hands and they put nails in his feet. Then they took him down and they put him in a tomb. Preachers always say it's a borrowed tomb so they can give us a little bit of foreshadow. That foreshadow just lets us know that He's not going to need it long. It's almost like when you're reading a descriptive book or you see the hero working in any kind of movie that you like. You realize that he is going to come out of there. And so they said it's a borrowed tomb. Let me tell you that sometimes we are in the pit. Sometimes we deserve to be in the pit. But as long as you know the Lord Jesus, you realize that as we pray the prayer to God and say, forgive me, Lord. That He's quick to forgive, even in the twinkle of an eye. He forgives us and He gives us His grace and His mercy. He doesn't put us down, but He picks us up. I'm glad that there's hope in Jesus. The fact that He died and He was buried in a borrowed tomb. But you see, the story doesn't end there. And so the good part about that is that our stories don't end there. Because the world will take you and count you out. Say that you are gone for good. See, it's easy to go down. It's hard to come up. See, the other week, I was in a tall building. I got on the elevator to go up, but I took the steps coming down. I'm quite proud of myself. I said I had done something, but gravity will help you come down. And so, it's easy to come down. It's easy for you to allow the enemy to bring you down. It's hard to get back up. But guess what? Ain't nothing too hard for God. And so, there was a man named Jesus who was buried in a borrowed tomb. He was put down, but God lifted him up.
Yes.
The Bible says that he was there in that tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, but early one morning he got up. It says that we are saved because we believe that God has raised him from the dead. Well, you know I'm saved today because I believe that God is a raiser. He'll raise you up from your situation and your problem. Sister Thelma, I'm glad, as they said in the old church, we don't have to stay down in the muck and the miry clay. But God will pick you up and turn you around and plant your feet on solid ground. And that solid rock is Jesus. And we can be here to stay. Don't put them down. Pick them up because you need some picking up. I need some picking up. All of us need some picking up. On some days you feel so low, so level to the ground, but ain't you glad that God got some picking up power? He'll pick us up and put us in a place that we might stay with joy and peace and love. So don't put them down. Pick them up.
Amen.